Recording.
Let's
Okay,
go.
Matt, what's up?
Well, we
How's it
can
going?
finally start talking on mic.
Yes,
Well,
yes.
Every time we record one of these, we have to be a little bit careful that we're not talking about anything too interesting beforehand. Because
We have
otherwise
to
we get
avoid all
in,
the
we're
good
setting up, we got to
content.
put the cameras in place, and we're just chatting.
So I'm curious. Did you? This might have to be cut, but did you? Do you have an exhibit at Open Source? They just announced or
did they?
internally sent out exhibitor things.
That's awesome.
They're
No,
pumping out
we
the Discord.
Oh, we didn't this year. That's awesome. What, did you get one?
I'm going in. Yeah, I don't remember what I wrote on the application, but hopefully everything legitimate and fun. And yeah, so
That's awesome.
Yeah, I'll be touting electronics dev at the open source. So, what is open source for
Open
everybody?
source,
Yeah.
SAUCE, open. So we're all familiar with SOURCE. Free as in freedom and typically as in beer as well. But open source SAUCE started what?
Can I pause you there?
Go ahead.
What does that mean? Free as in beer?
So there's a free as in beer is in like if you get free beer, someone hands you a free beer and you can drink it and you didn't pay any money.
Super clear.
Right? And so in this open source world, I think they also, it's not just free as in freedom. There's like a better way to think about it. But you have the freedom to modify your software, but you also don't have to pay money for it. And so there's sort of two classes of what free means. And so
I feel like if there were 4 quadrants, there would be like, you don't pay, you pay.
yep.
And then
You're allowed to modify it.
Allowed to modify.
Allowed to modify, redistribute, open, like modify the source, do GPL, an MIT-like thing, Apache-like things, or it's source provided, which isn't a model that really I see anyone do much
Yeah.
these days. Source provided, but you can't fuck with it.
That's right. And there's a lot of interesting stuff happening with licensing and AI, like open weights and stuff like that. But before we get to that, open source, you were just explaining open source conference.
Okay, started it's where we met, like 3 years ago, 2023, 2022.
We did. We met
Yeah.
at open source. That's
Yep.
crazy. We were both exhibiting.
Yeah, were we?
I was exhibiting for Seam and I was wandering around.
Oh, awesome.
And then you were exhibiting Atopile. Mm-hmm. Was Atopile a company when you were
It was not a company at all. It was barely even a project. It was an
Really?
MVP and a couple of cool trinkets that we'd built with it.
Did it have are the same like contributors / like people making that happen there, or did it like change from now since
It's definitely evolved, but two of us at the core, Narayan
Nice.
and I, were both there, and actually originally our Tim, who was extremely influential in the start of the project, really kicked things off with us, and went through YC with us as well, and then decided to part ways. But he was there too, so you'll see him in some of the early YouTube videos on our channel.
Nice.
At those early events and photographs and that type of thing too.
Speaking of YouTube videos, all these YC companies are putting out these YouTube videos that are kind of like, I don't know how to describe it, but they're like, there's like the founder in the corner,
Yep.
and then it's like a demo of the product,
Yep.
and it's kind of like, it doesn't have that much pizzazz or like editing.
Yep.
So you have that side of the spectrum, and then you have like Founders Inc. side of the spectrum. This is a very SF thing, but do you know what kind of videos I'm talking about?
Founders Inc.
So Founders Inc. is an incubation space or whatever, co-working space for founders in San Francisco. I think they have a deal where they give you you give them some equity for $50K.
Okay.
And you get a bunch
an
of
investment?
stuff. I call it's like an investment, but incubators, for people not super familiar in the startup ecosystem, incubators have like kind of weird deals.
Yep.
So
Because they're giving you stuff other than the money for the however much money they give you.
Exactly.
Yep.
And it's hard to equate it to an investment. So I don't know if you've ever heard this, but people say that the YC deal at the moment, at this point in time, is like something like if you got a safe investment on a 10 mil cap with all the terms added together, something like that.
Yeah.
And so that's the type of investment you would equate it to. But there aren't the same equations for all the other incubators like Techstars and stuff like that, because they all have like weird parameters on their deal. Like they might be the most favored nation or whatever. So if you get a future investment, they get in on that and all these weird parameters. Anyway,
As does YC actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's hard to figure out those deals. But anyway, Founders Inc. It could be fantastic. I don't know that much about it, other than every company in Founders Inc. seems to have the ability to just get a super highly edited launch video, like top notch. the same person who I think made build space video, like all the build space kind of video content.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure one of those guys is in there.
Oh, okay.
They were
Did
all
you
in the
pick
same
that up from
building.
the editing style, or just...
It's the editing style.
Okay.
It's like, there's a vibe to it. Okay. I wonder if I can pull up one of these.
Yeah, have you got a company in mind?
So this guy Farza, who previously was the founder of BuildSpace, he recently launched something. So let's pull that up. Yeah, okay. This is the editing style.
So, TLDR, I've got no ideas. So you think that after taking 8 months off and traveling the world, I'd come back and something would just click. But
super saturated, right?
Yeah.
life's not a movie.
And
Still though,
there's not
I'm
that
back.
much happening in this video. It's basically a talking head, but there's this very stylistic editing style. So
Yeah.
he's talking about not having any ideas,
Yeah.
and
Nobody cares.
somehow there's a whole video about that. So yeah, that's a perk of Founders Inc. But YC companies are kind of doing, I'm seeing like almost this opposite side where they kind of just they demo their product. Maybe they didn't even like zoom in that much, and the founder's head is in the bottom right. You know what I'm talking about?
Yep.
But maybe it's working.
Super low polish. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know.
I think that's what comes when there's such, like, YC obviously like harps on about, really gets into go talk to your customers. It's like, a core tenant for them. And so if you're hyper customer focused rather than necessarily like maybe some kind of marketing mindset, that type of thing, then like the polish is just that, it's polish.
That's so true, right? Like people spend so much time polishing their pitch decks and all like their website, and there's no product behind it.
We've found the website now that we've got a product. We're sitting there with the website, and people land currently directly into our docs because we're hyper developer focused. And our ICP, our customer at the moment, is someone who is super, super technical. Like, if you were to draw a bell curve, they're the like 5% most technical tail.
Right.
And so, they want to be at the docs. Why wouldn't we redirect them anywhere? But if you look us up for really any other reason, you launch straight into the docs, you're like, so what do you guys actually do?
Right.
So I spent a bit of the last couple of days working on a landing page that now tries to satisfy both. Right. So anyway, that's my
I have a little secret. My landing page, I'm pretty sure I generated it in like 10 minutes. I used V0. I generated it very, very quickly.
What's V0?
And we've done little edits. So Vercel launched a chat to website bot called V0. And it's pretty cool. So you talk to this bot and it makes iterations and it saves every version and you can go back and forth. One of my favorite features of V0 is you can click on elements and say, I want this part changed or something like that.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I don't know how it compares to like Lovable. That's a really, really big one right now.
Lovable's so hot right now.
Lovable's very hot. And there was a recent scandal with Lovable.
What was the scandal?
The scandal with Lovable is they launched a feature where you could dive into the code called dev mode. And then
I just saw this. In fact, I was proud. I saw this post on LinkedIn when it was 3 minutes old.
Whoa, yes. This is hot news as of today.
Not because I'm on LinkedIn all the time, because I happened to have just stumbled upon it. To be clear.
We know where you were, Matt. Anyway, so Figma sent Lovable a copyright
cease
notice?
And desist type of thing.
Cease and desist, that they could not use dev mode. Dev mode is a trademark.
The term dev mode specifically, not the concept of being able to look at the code. That would be just absurd, of course.
So what do you think about that, dev mode?
So I actually almost immediately after that was listening to a talk by the lawyers that one of our investors organized to just give like broad spectrum IP advice to their companies. And they just said, hey, look, guys, if you want to listen to, whatever it was, 45 minutes or an hour of just like lawyer, little back and forth, and you can have a chat with them, like come along. So, open mic, great, loved it, informative and appreciated. And like, one of the things that I had to ask in this was in a similar field for patents. If something's been around the traps forever and some company manages to convince a patent office, or in this case, a trademark office, that, dev mode's our thing. It's like, guys, we've been calling stuff dev mode for decades. Like, how could you possibly trademark it? I think we all have a a moral obligation to ignore those trolls. Like, you can't just let them walk you. It doesn't make sense.
Right.
So good on Lovable.
Yeah, I think Jack Dorsey and Elon Musk recently sat down for a talk, and they just talked about how maybe IP law isn't super great for just like innovation, you know? Yeah, and Tesla kind of famously said, okay, here are all of our patents, and they don't, what do you call that? Like, go after people for their patents.
Prosecute.
Prosecute, yeah.
They was it all of them? I'm trying to remember. They definitely released a large number of the charging related ones. I think it was like about 1,500 patents, maybe a decade ago.
Yeah.
But, you know, there's more recent ones too. All sorts of stuff. And I think the equation that's been missed with the patents is that they're all a uniform 20-year patent, right?
Yeah.
And if you're developing a new drug and you have to literally spend $1 billion in the research and development and approval processes to get that drug to market, you need some time to recoup that investment.
Right.
It's just simple maths there. And if it wasn't for some IP protection at all, you'd be stuffed, because someone else, it's trivial to work out what compounds are in that drug and then synthesize those and put it in. It's all proving that it actually works in the first place.
Right. Yeah.
And so that's hard. But if you're taking it back a step and saying, well, actually, you know, even a SpaceX rocket, let's go there, for example. If you got a hold of one of those units and you were so, oh, you know, greedy, let's go, we can just copy these things and go from here, you couldn't. There's so much more to it that goes into the thing they're working rather than what you actually end up at the end.
Right. It reminds me of, I think Musk also said this, that sort of manufacturing something is 100 times harder than designing something like that.
Scale,
like scaling
absolutely,
up. Yeah. And there might be some places where that doesn't apply, but the only like obvious example where I see IP stuff kind of like this is kind of interesting. So this is also related to tariffs.
Oh no.
Mr. Wonderful, the guy from Shark Tank,
yep.
He recently said, oh, we should increase the tariffs to 400%. Like, they should be so high against China specifically, because they don't respect the intellectual property laws. And if you think about like your Shark Tank companies, they almost always have something where they're like, oh yeah, we're patent pending, we have some patent, right? So that type of company with like this small physical product innovation, really like
trivially copyable.
Yeah, trivially copyable, and that's who the IP protection seems to work for. But I also don't have like a tremendous amount of respect for these products. you know, the Shark Tank-esque products.
I have a lot of respect for the people, but because it's genuinely really hard to bring that all to market in the US, and the reward's not obvious. Like, those people are taking a really genuine hard risk and are trying to make like a functional business. But if you go to somewhere like China, where the manufacturing is of, it's not, when I say quality, I don't necessarily mean the products are of extremely high quality, although they often are. I mean that their manufacturing lines are of extreme quality.
Right.
They are extremely flexible, extremely capable of delivering high quality goods if you want them.
Right.
And then retooling on a dime. And so if you want 1,000 of something, for example, or even if you want 100 of something, you can go to China and have them do 100 off batch at prices that rival like tens of thousands of quantity in the US. And that flexibility means that you can innovate on the product side super fast. And it's a different game.
So maybe what we're kind of like examining right now is that when you don't have IP laws, or you don't have strong IP laws, you're sort of incentivizing manufacturing, not new design, right?
Well, I think it might be a correlation, but not a causation.
Gotcha.
In the sense that
what I'm saying is, if China doesn't have intellectual property laws, how is that gonna evolve and be bad for them, right? Like,
well, they disrespect the US's intellectual property laws. They have their own intellectual property laws themselves.
Oh, so they do have like a patent system that's enforced internally.
Yes. And so you, as a Chinese company, if another Chinese company copies you, it's enforceable. The courts will help you, all of that. But they just ignore international IP.
Oh, interesting.
That's the spicy part of all that equation.
Okay. So they're not standing up on some grand principle around intellectual property. Okay.
No, there's no grand principles there at all. be competitive is probably a grand principle, but it's not the same thing as like we don't believe in IP. It's
wow. Okay. All right. That's really interesting. I didn't know that. I'll definitely have to look into that. Speaking of, China and tariffs,
oh mate, how could we not?
These tariffs are crazy. Yeah, let's get into it.
So have you been hit with any of them yet?
I have not yet paid for anything with tariffs. I haven't sent in a PCB order in 2 weeks. So
is it disincentivized you from doing so?
I definitely wanted to wait for some stuff to play out. So like the main things, I'm ordering like 2 things right now, mainly LED matrices and keyboards.
Okay.
And that's just because we're scaling up our auto router, and like those are 2 really easy tests for auto routers.
Yeah.
But yeah, I haven't tried to order. So I'm very curious. You mentioned before the podcast you had ordered some things and you got slapped with it.
Yeah, we've got hit a few times now.
Yeah. Is it like just across the board? Like, is it specific to the export code you use or whatever? Like, what happened there with these?
Well, it's changing day to day. As of when we ordered it, it was across the board. As of today, there are a couple of export codes that, well, as of yesterday, actually, there are a couple of export codes that made it through.
Oh, interesting.
And we actually have a shipment waiting with 145% tariffs on them, which is like $1,500. So it was $1,000 worth of boards. It'll cost us $2,500 to be clear. To get it done in the US would be about 10 plus.
Yeah.
So it's still cheaper to pay the tariff and bring it in. It just like we as an American company are just spewing our capital straight into tariffs. So
you're just paying the government.
It's extremely painful. Yeah, exactly. It's just an extra tax, really. And it's obviously a huge tax. But it doesn't actually incentivize us to bring the manufacturing back to the US. And as we've seen, Seve, we have a micro fab upstairs.
Right.
And so we considered for a minute there, and it was only a minute. We were like, wow, should we not pivot per se, but like reinvest, think about this aspect of what we've worked on?
Yeah.
And the answer was very quickly, well, we could, but by the time we've finished it, and we're startups, so we're ballistically fast, both of us.
Right.
Even if it only took us a week to figure that out, things would have changed. We need to work on the month scale, and a typical company needs to work on the year scale.
That's right.
And so we can't even retool our manufacturing to get around them and bring the manufacturing back to the US in any sensible way.
Yeah. It's really tricky because we do need to have, if we knew for a fact that the tariffs were going to stay for a long period of time, then we could definitely shift things. But right now, my equation internally is before I had a go-to manufacturer, I basically use JLCPCB for most things.
Yep, they're awesome.
Now I'm looking at other ones. There's a US one, Circuit Hub, and then another one I'm looking at is Macro Fab, which I believe is US Mexico.
Yep.
And, tariffs are probably not going to be as bad against Mexico. So that, I think moving manufacturing to the US is probably, or at least moving all the fabrication steps to the US is probably unlikely, particularly the actual PCB, the bare PCB board.
Yeah.
Because it's such a environmental. Have you ever looked at this, like making a PCB in-house? Like,
yeah, I've been to a fab.
Oh, really? In the US?
I've toured a US fab. Yeah, it was awesome. It was fantastic. They're based in the South Bay, and were really kind enough to reach out to us. There's a few, but they're kind enough to reach out to us and said, "Hey guys, like we'd love to discuss some, some form of what you're up to and whether or not it would make sense to work together on anything."
Right.
Come by, and they were so kind. They gave us a full tour.
Wow.
Super cool stuff. Yeah,
that's awesome. And like, is it so there's this big meme right now that Chinese factories are super, super automated and US factories are not as automated. When you were touring these South Bay factories, and I'm glad we haven't mentioned them because now we can.
It was intentional because I appreciate them. I think they're a great business, and I see an absolute future. But no, they were nothing compared to the Chinese
you've got a lot of
factories.
people transferring things around.
Extremely manual, and manual even not in the manufacturing sense, manual in the quality assurance of the design files, which, to be clear, actually, yes, the Chinese factories have as well. They have a big team that'll open up the boards and double check them for things.
Right.
All sorts of automation in both cases. But in the Chinese case, Chinese companies famously build a lot of their own software automation.
Yeah.
And like Tesla and like SpaceX, like a lot of these big, fast-moving companies, having your own own thin stack that you can manipulate to exactly your needs is potent.
Yeah, one of the things that separates JLCPCB is they do build their own EDA software called Easy EDA.
Yep.
And that gives them a lot of flexibility. Like they can have an engineer kind of like convert any file into that standard view. They can build things on top of that for reviewing.
They have a whole accurate, as far as we can tell, library of the footprints and the schematic symbols and metadata about the components.
And they're sort of, I like when the manufacturer provides the footprint files to some extent, because if it doesn't fit, it's kind of their problem. So they're really incentivized to make sure those footprints are good.
I've never had any trouble with it. Have you?
No, I've never had a problem with the JLC PCB footprint.
Yep.
But I've never had a problem with the snappy EDA footprint either.
Yep.
But I have heard people say that there are problems, and there is a sort of a misaligned incentive there where they're incentivized to have it, not necessarily for it to be correct.
I see. Yep.
A little bit, but yeah. Sorry, I went out around there.
We discussed lightly the South Bay manufacturers and then the tariffs, which
the
South Bay manufacturers. So let's put it. We're talking about what we could do upstairs here in and out, like microfab, and like realistically, prototype boards maybe is the answer on any remotely sensible timescale. But even for someone that actually has the equipment and the trained staff, like building these pipelines out for them, because we've discussed it, we're like, okay, one of the big benefits of JLC is getting the assembly in-house as well.
Right.
They have the components stocked. They have the assembly equipment. They have all the metadata about the components, so it's easy for them to set up the machines. And then they've obviously got the actual bare board fab as well.
Right.
And so you get a board back, and this is where the value proposition actually lies for us. One is the cost. Sure, there's, it's still a quarter, even with the tariffs of the cost, or a fifth of the cost compared to the US. And without it, it's about a tenth, right?
Yeah.
But the cycle time on actually getting a board back from one of these Chinese vendors is, including shipping, often only 5 days.
Yeah, it's crazy. I don't know if you noticed this, but I always kind of said, it's 2 weeks. But I've been getting them in a week.
Yep.
It's crazy fast.
Yeah, it's incredible. Which, as a PSA, which shipping company do you typically use?
Oh man, that's a good question. I might use FedEx. I'm wondering. Yeah. What do you use?
We've typically always loved DHL, but they handle the tariffs poorly compared to UPS.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
UPS will pay the tariff on your behalf, practically speaking, and then send you your goods, rather than DHL will hold them until it's paid. And so if you care about days, which everyone should, getting your hardware days earlier obviously matters if you actually care about your cycle time.
Yeah.
Use UPS.
I just remembered a very obscure thing. I was at PCB West, and US manufacturers were talking about how Chinese manufacturers don't check for quality, and or don't check that your circuit's being made correctly, or don't check your work or something like that. And I think US companies have a completely different style. I think we might have talked about this a while ago, but US companies kind of like created this format, like IPC. Have you heard of this thing?
Yeah.
It's like, let me look at the name of this. IPC 2581. And I believe this is related to, oh my gosh, there's so many formats.
It's additional metadata on top of the actual PCB, like basically on top of Gerbers, right?
No, it replaces Gerber's. I'm trying to remember the other. ODB++.
What a mouthful.
So the US manufacturers have been trying to solve this problem of checking constraints by kind of inventing a new standard.
Yep.
That you have to pay for to get the specs on, which is like the bane of my existence. But they kind of invent this standard that makes it so that almost by giving the data, the check is like automatic. Like anybody can build the checker. And so they're kind of creating the standard. But I think Chinese manufacturers might have this kind of more manual style where you almost always seem to upload Gerbers and like they're not checking netlist or anything like that. So they're doing more basic checks, but they have a lot more sophistication built on top of those basic files.
Yep.
So this is something that might change in the future. US like Macrofab and Circuit Hub, I don't think they accept Gerbers.
Oh, interesting.
Because they're just like, they're there's no tolerance information inside of these.
Yep.
Right. So it's one of those things where we might be on a good trajectory in the long term, but a lot of people haven't built those export formats or don't use those export formats. Have you ever used these ODB ++ things?
No, I mean, I know about them, but just like the problem is a lot of the manufacturers that we typically interface with just don't use them themselves.
Yeah.
So we generate them, but like, who cares?
Where's
that going to get us?
I'm with you.
And the other aspect of this is like, where does the data lie? I think that, I mean, having a closed standard like ODB++, like you're saying it is, I haven't checked myself, but I trust you.
It's like pseudo closed. Actually, okay. A minor note on this. ODB++ has a closed form, which is the original, and an open form.
Okay. How does that work?
Well, a lot of people were upset about that because they didn't really know, and it was all over. The closed form or the open version of it actually was essentially deprecated. Everybody said, we're not going to use that anymore.
Using the open version.
Using the open version. So now everybody accepts, generally speaking, the closed version because the open version decided to make some changes and people were like, this is too confusing. So then to resolve this confusion with a closed standard being everywhere, IPC 25 whatever was created.
Okay.
So that's the new version.
Is it open?
It's pseudo open. So you have to pay the committee $200 to read the specification. But $200 isn't that much, but it's like, that's not how we do open standards. And so support isn't fantastic.
No, that's how you end up with like construction standards.
Yeah.
Which, great. Like, sure, some tradesmen can read them, but like, it's not actually useful to proliferate something in the software ecosystem. It's just not.
And I don't know what to do about it. I haven't purchased the license yet, and
We can make a standard.
We can make a new standard. That XKCD comic. Let's just make an 8th standard. I don't know what to do about it because if I build a converter for it, it's going to be all open source. There's going to be a lot of references and stuff like that. Am I breaking some rules? I have to like read their license agreement to know.
ChatGPT to read it for you.
Yeah, I could get ChatGPT. Oh, by the way, it's tax day today. I don't know if you had to deal with that.
Oh God, of course I had to deal with it. Everyone does, right?
Yeah.
Anyone who has any, okay.
Well, I don't know if you have an accountant, I guess is what I was trying to say. Because some people just go accountant, do it.
It doesn't even actually matter in my experience because I have used accountants in past years, a couple of different services, and you still have to enter all of your documents in their various like BS kind of mechanisms. And so, sure, someone might be signing it off at the end of the day, but it's still just as much work for me. I might have a bit more confidence in it, but for the cost.
Honestly, it could be worse because you can't claim ignorance, right? Like, there's a lot of things you can claim when you're doing your own taxes. You'll be like, oh, I didn't know.
Yeah, well, I'll get deported for that. I don't know. So,
okay, fair enough.
So tax day, look, amazing. It's still not automated. And for anyone who's listening from outside the US, you would not believe how dumb it is here. These guys cannot get it together. I swear to God. So I've lived obviously in Australia and in Germany. And in Australia, you go on a government website, a government digital portal. It's good quality. It just looks like a modern but very bland website, and it's pre-populated with all the information your banks or stock portfolio or employer have given them throughout the year. And so you just go, that is correct. That is correct. Actually, I want to claim an extra thing on here. I'm done, and I'll have my $500 tax return or whatever it is. Thank you very much. Or sometimes you have to pay more if you had additional income that wasn't properly counted.
Sure.
But broadly speaking, it takes about 5 minutes in my experience.
Is that website good though?
Yes.
Shit. I thought that was going to be the gotcha.
No, I mean, like, it's not beautiful. It's not this amazing web app, but it's like perfectly adequate. It's using like
it's doing taxes.
Modern web standards. It's not like a beautiful CRM that cascades the tables with little animations. It doesn't need to be. It's doing my taxes, and it does a great job with them. So, Australian government, I appreciate you. So, thank you so much.
It's getting cheaper to file taxes in the US. I think like there's like Free Tax USA or something like that. I've been using TurboTax forever, and I feel like I shouldn't switch because They just
They have all your data now.
They have all my data, and so and it's so consistent. I'm like, I don't want to ruffle any feathers, so I pay TurboTax like $200 a year now.
Yeah. Well, why do you think it's bad in the US? Because TurboTax has forever lobbied the federal government to ensure that
and
it
we
stays
keep paying
crap.
them because we don't want to deal with it.
And you keep paying them.
But I did my taxes in 43 minutes this year.
Oh my
which
God.
is, you know,
mate, good stuff. Let's go.
Thank you. TurboTax gives you like a little, you know, they do the confetti. You know, make you feel better about paying them $200.
They give you confetti if it's your record. Is it like a PB on Strava or a PR on Strava? Is that?
I would guess everybody gets the confetti, but they show you the total time, and I was pleasantly surprised.
Wow.
I used to have the worst taxes ever. Have you done business tax? This is going to be so boring, but have you done business taxes?
I haven't filed them myself. We do have accountants for that.
Oh, I see.
Thank God.
I did it. I did my own taxes this year because I'm my girlfriend recently sent me something and she was like, you have a founder archetype, and it's somebody who's like overly, I probably shouldn't say any of this, but it's somebody who like wants to understand everything.
I mean, you should want to understand at least to a high level everything, because you're in charge of making those calls at the end of the day.
Right. So with ChatGPT, taxes are much easier. So previously I would have gotten an accountant.
It has
for sure.
an answer for you.
It has an answer. Hopefully it's correct. But I wanted to try to go deep and understand business taxes. So I installed this thing called Bean Count. Have you ever heard of this?
No, that's a great name.
It's a fantastic name. It's kind of an old piece of software, but what it does is handles your business accounting, which is probably the most time-consuming part of doing taxes, is figuring out what you spent all your money on. And I got Claude to basically categorize most transactions, like almost all of them. So it's this really automated system now for figuring out all my accounting work.
That's the way you want it to be. It's the way it should be. The fact that when I have a credit card transaction, because like that's the vast majority in terms of just number of transactions, right? The fact that it doesn't come back, and if the credit card companies don't want to facilitate this, fine. But the terminal companies should hit my receipt, should hit some API with my receipt, send it there, and then I, as the owner of that card, can go collect my receipt. And then automatically tag it back to whatever transaction that was and have the itemized receipts just done.
It should be instant, right?
It should be that easy.
So I like my setup, and I also think that probably nobody is doing this because it's kind of deranged to do this as a business owner. But I use this service called Bean Hub, and it connects with Plaid to my business bank accounts and credit cards. And Bean Hub will send transactions to the system, and then a GitHub action picks it up, categorizes the transaction, updates the accounting book, and then generates a website that's an overview of all my expenses.
Oh.
And by the way, this is the only way I could do taxes because it's the only way I would have any fun with it. Like if I was just sitting there in QuickBooks, I would like
kill yourself.
It'd be over for me.
Terrible. Mate,
oh my God.
Well, I appreciate the automation. Mate, Seve, thank you so much. It was great
Thanks a ton, Matt. Great chatting. Fucking tax content.